Good day, everyone. How's everybody today? I wanted to come on today and speak to you a kind of like a prelude to the next lesson because I'm going to expose a strategy of the adversary here on something, and actually a demonic influence that, believe it or not, a lot of us get stuck under, not understanding how it works. And that is religion. And you guys kind of have heard me mention on a couple of other videos about religion and how I just really don't like it. But the one worst part of where it stems from actually is the very place where we have gotten our beliefs from, which would be the church. And so that's one of the strategies of the adversary, because, and I'm not saying churches are bad, they're just incomplete, in my opinion. They don't care to give the meat that they need to give so that people grows up strong. And they don't touch on what could be considered controversial. Okay. So they give people just enough to keep them coming back. And they don't teach the full truth. Some of the doctrines that are out there are just plain false. Okay. So in the next lesson, I'm going to poke holes in some of them. And I'll do it in such a way that, it shows scripture in your notes so that you can seek Father and follow the Ruach into that and ask the Father. Line it up. But, the scripture is the standard, okay? And that's the authority. So if you line those beliefs up against the scripture and see if they measure up, then they're good. But it seems like there's a whole 3/4 of the Bible that is not taught. And that is by design from that dark kingdom so that people don't grow to get strong. And if you look at it like in the natural, where a natural comparison would be to that would be like an abortioner going into a womb and killing off that child before it's fully formed, okay? Or, yeah, so it would be like keeping it in gestation to where it never reaches maturity so that it can come and be fully formed. That's the way that works, and that is a strategy of the adversary, because if people grow up real strong, then what happens is they can fend him off. They can put him dead to rights. They can bind him. They can call out devils. They can do all the things that Yeshua gave us power to do. Remember Matthew 10:1. And then for those that are called to be spiritual warriors, it takes a lot of growth and a lot of maturity to be able to walk in that. because with that growth and with that maturity comes razor sharp discernment, like laser pinpoint accurate discernment, so that you can call a thing out by name and make it comply, because through Yeshua, his name, all things have got to obey that. It isn't us, like within our own self doing that, it's him in us. And so I just wanted to come on and prepare you guys, because this next lesson, is, I'm always notorious for stirring up a hornet's nest somewhere. Seems like I'm always doing that and upset people by telling them the truth. So what you're going to hear are things that are not what you've ever heard. But it's in the scripture. It's just right there in black and white. Face value, not in the upper levels or anything. You can take that for what it is. So the adversary has so many different strategies, that he comes against us or will snatch things away from us that belongs to us. He's a thief and a liar and a murderer. And he will use, once we start learning the truth, another tactic he'll use is he'll come come at us through religious relatives. I had that happen to a young lady that have been working with a little bit. She lives over in California, and she was standing strong in her walk, and then her religious dad, who doesn't understand anything having to do with the kingdom belief system, basically what he had to say to her just kind of let the air out of her, kind of set her back on her butt a little bit, and I had to kind of re-bolster that and explain some things to her. And the whole thing was about women in ministry. That is such a hot topic. A hot topic. And that one there causes a lot of problems. That and some other doctrines out there that are kind of doctrines of men that don't have like upper level understanding on things. Because the truth of the matter is that, when a person is walking in the kingdom, Yeshua said about people, like that story that he told his disciples about when they asked him a question about if a woman married into a family that had, several brothers, and she married the one brother and he died, and then she married another brother and he died, and then she married another brother and he died. Which in the resurrection, whose wife would she be? Now that is on several levels. Yeshua was real good about that. When he would teach a parable, he would say one thing, but it would have all these levels, and it would touch everyone who heard it differently. Okay, it's the beauty of how he would teach. But Yeshua's response to that was, well, in heaven or the kingdom. Sorry about that. I had to cut that off for a minute because my dogs were having a screaming fit, barking, which they're still being loud in the other room. Anyways, but Yeshua was saying that in heaven or in the kingdom, there is no giving in marriage, that she would be like the angels. Another passage that answers that is that where Paul says that there is neither Greek nor Jew, bond nor free, male or female, okay, in Yeshua. We know Yeshua is the kingdom, right? Another thing, too, is how I can answer that is, and this is how I told this young lady, is that Yeshua says in John chapter 3, when he's talking to Nicodemus, he said that that which is born of flesh is flesh, and that which is born of spirit is spirit. So if you're born of Father, then there is no male or female. You're just a son or seed offspring. There's no gender there. So I had to re-bolster her on that, because in that doctrine, I suffer a woman not to teach, what Paul was saying, is that, they focus right in on one little verse instead of looking at the whole context, and they take a penknife there and they make a doctrine on a little tiny thing when there's a lot more than that. So I even asked my apostle, my pastor, about that. I asked him, I said, what's your thoughts on that? And he said, that one's a hot button topic. He said, I believe that God calls who he calls. And that's all he had to say about it. So you see how doctrines of man, tradition of man, are avenues where the adversary comes at us, creates division, creates strife, contention, oppression, all these other things. And sometimes it's not even true, the traditions of man. So this is where the adversary is at work, in the very place that we're supposed to learn from. Father pulled me out of that system a long time ago. And because he gave me an understanding of how all that works, and I just don't want to be a part of it. So that's another avenue, where the adversary comes at root and gets us in our areas where we don't know things. And we have this like cycle of patterns and repeat that we get stuck in, where we get just so far in our growth, and then somehow it works out to where we end off either in left field, or we just keep not achieving what we want to achieve, because we're not getting all the information. And that's by design. We get discouraged, and then we wonder why people backslide, or we wonder why deliverance ain't happen. We wonder why we can't receive a healing. We wonder, all these things, or why prayer isn't getting answered. And that is because of one of the strategies of the adversary. He uses the very church that we're supposed to grow up in and learn in against us. If you can see that. And he uses our religious relatives. Another thing what he'll do is he'll use the brethren against each other. Okay? Works that way all the time. I've been in ministry long enough that I know, and I've seen it, and I've seen it flare up at me. It happens quite often in raising up disciples. And that comes from a place of just not knowing any better. Okay? Because they just don't understand. So they come and they attack you because they're not as mature or developed as you might be. And so eventually what happens is the adversary comes because, it bothers your heart when one of your brethren, does something. So here comes the adversary. He's like, don't nobody want to hear nothing from you. You're not even raising anybody up anyway, blah, 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 blah. So he does that. And he attacks ministers extra hard on those kind of things because in ministry we know that we're responsible and accountable for the condition of Father's sheep. And if we do something wrong with one of them, we answer to Father. So he will come and he will, like, say if someone didn't want to receive their correction, right? And then they get mad and they separate themselves and whatever, well, here come the adversary. Well, Jesus didn't lose any of his sheep. Look at you. What are you doing? You're creating offense. you know. So, he gets in the middle of religion, the very thing that we're supposed to be trying to grow up into. And he'll use that, or he uses also false teachers, right? And people just run right after them because they tickle their ears, right? So I'm saying these things to alert you that there's some things that just ain't quite right. And the what isn't quite right is it's the adversary hindering the work. He's not allowing truth. Or you've got another thing with some of these pastors out there, some of them are just Pharisees. Okay? They're just there because it's a job, it's a profession, they're a hireling. Okay? So they don't care really to raise people up. They preach their sermons and do their little bit of work, and that's it. That's, the company men. And I'm not saying all are like that, and please don't, get mad at me and leave me nasty comments. Sister Tracy, you just hate pastors. I am a pastor. Like, I kind of hate myself, right? And I'm an ordained pastor at that. So, it's, I just know that there's a lot of things that's happening in the churches that are just not right. And I know, because I know the adversary, I know that kingdom, I know how it works, where I know how they work in there, and I know why they do it. So I just wanted to have this little chit chat with y'all to, kind of let you know that the next lesson, we're going to poke holes in some literally foundational doctrines and explain why. And we're going to go through, there's a whole lot of scripture, so the next video might be long. The next lesson might be long. And I'm not going to really treat you guys to any word study this time because I want you to dig things up yourself. Okay? If you've been watching since the first of this, then you know that I keep telling you to learn to study. And the meanings of words, more often than not, mean something either different or a lot bigger than what we think. So I can present scripture and then I'm going to send you digging to find the answers on this one. Okay? And if you don't want to get a Strong's Concordance, there's a website that I love to use, which you can use on your tablet or your computer or whatever. It's called godrules.net. And that has the scripture and the Strong's numbers, and the numbers are just above the word in blue, and you tap on that, and it takes you to the definition of that word. So you can use that. There's uh, there's others that you can use that are, I think Thayer's lexicon actually is even on that site, and there's other study tools that are actually on that site as well. And if you can afford it, there's Logos Bible software. I can't afford that one, so I don't have it, but I really probably wouldn't use it anyway because I've been studying the same way that the Ruach taught me to study for 30 years. Another thing that I use and I look at is synonyms of words, okay? And sometimes I'll use the dictionary. Oxford has a good dictionary, and of course the old-fashioned Merriam-Webster. So we can go and we can root out, and sometimes like we'll have a misunderstanding. Say for instance, salvation and redemption, we consider those to be the same word, but they're not. So that's a challenge for you. Go try to find that, because not understanding language is the basis for the mistakes that we make in interpreting things. Okay? So, and that's another thing too that just irks me to no end, is that people don't teach people how to study. When the scripture says, study to show thyself approved, a workman unto God, rightly dividing the word of and why other ministers don't encourage the flock that they are responsible for to study. Now, they have Bible study nights, but they don't sit down with all the lexicons and show people how to dig into that word. I don't understand, but anyway, I guess this is just kind of a little small rant, but I kind of wanted to tell you that the things that you're going to hear in the next lesson also is an exposure of the strategy of the enemy that uses the own systems that we believe in our own foundations against us. And also then where the lack of truth or half-truths in doctrine, that to me goes all the way back to that tree in the Garden of Eden, okay? So, it's all predicated on half-truths. So there's like three big ones that I touch on in the notes, and I did all the notes yesterday, and I haven't recorded the video just yet, but I gave you guys a little taste. There is no spoon. So, and don't misunderstand that. I'm not a New Age believer, Tibetan believer, Buddhist believer, or anything like that. It's just that, to me, that whole scene with that young man just really, it really speaks volumes. There's no spoon. So we'll touch on that in the lesson coming. But anyways, I just wanted to just come on and touch base with you, have a little chat with you, give you some food for thought so that you can prepare your mind and your heart for the next lesson in the high level warfare course. So anyway, that's it for now. Okay. And I'll be working on that video and get that put up here pretty soon. So Abba bless you all. Okay, I love you with all my heart, and I'm just hoping to get you guys raised up good and strong, being the fierce, mighty warrior and roaring lions that you were born to be. So, all right, till next time. Bye bye.